Hi. Thanks for the great introduction. I am very happy to be back here on Earth. I actually just got back less than 3 months ago. I was on a mission to the International Space Station as part of the crew of the Space Shuttle Atlantis, and now it's great to see Earthlings again. In fact, so many. It's really a pleasure. Thank you. What I didn't know when I first became an astronaut, I knew I was going to get a chance to fly into space, maybe do some spacewalking and all those things that we just talked about. However, I had no idea that it would involve strengthening my ties and learning a great deal about the people of Russia as well as the people of Israel. That was something that was unforeseen and a very, very welcome part of my trip to space, and that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. And actually, what I've geared the speech towards is a little bit more about my time in Russia. So, but I wanted to say a few words up front about my interactions with the people of Israel, because that was a very, very important part. When I was on the space station, my first mission was as a crew member on the space station, and I was the first Jewish crew member on the International Space Station. And this was a pretty neat thing because it's, I have to cling to that because it's really hard to set records these days, The first guy in space, Yuri Gagarin, that's been done, right? The first man on the moon, that's all been done. Even the first Jew in space had already been done. But the first Jewish crew member on the International Space Station, that's mine. Thank you. So that was a thrill. When I did go up to the space station, I brought with me a emblem that was presented to me by President Peres, of the President of the State of Israel. And we have a picture of that floating in the Russian segment of the space station. And I presented that to him upon my return. And I was able to call down because I was up on board the space station during the 60th anniversary of the founding of the State of Israel. And I was able to call down to President Peres and wish him a happy anniversary. And that was a very, very special moment for me. And it's also great to see Minister Hershkowitz here. We are doing great things together in space, both our agency, NASA, and the incredible technologies that are being developed in Israel. And it's also, again, to echo your sentiment, very nice to be seeing you under much more wonderful circumstances this event today. So without any further ado, I'd like to start telling you a little bit about my time in Russia. So я хотел бы говорить немного по-русски, если вы не против. Отлично, отлично. Как я уже сказал, я американский астронавт, но у меня есть типичная еврейская мать. И честно говоря, она немного бедная, немного разочарованная, потому что я не стал доктором или адвокатом. Но что делать? Но я жил более-менее 2 года в сумме в Москве, подготовиться к полету в звездном городке. И скоро у меня есть несколько фото, как мы делали тренировку в звездном. И это все по-русски, может быть, сейчас по-английски еще раз. Спасибо. So if I can go to my first slide. So if you can see the screens, you can see that I grew up a very typical American boy in New Jersey. I grew up in Parsippany, New Jersey, and that's me playing Little League, proudly sporting Derek Jeter's number years before he ever would. Next slide, please. So it's a typical, it's very, very handsome photo there. Is a typical bar mitzvah boy in New Jersey as well. So I grew up a very typical American Jewish kid who never thought, if you show the next slide, when he was in high school, typical high school kid, never ever thought I would be an astronaut. In fact, if you asked me what I was going to do when I grew up, if you asked this guy, he would have told you, well, I'm probably going to be an engineer, maybe a doctor, because I was always interested in science, math, and those were my passions. But I was always fascinated with flying in space, and I loved watching the films of the Apollo flights, but I never thought it was something that would happen to me. So never in a million years did I think I would become an astronaut, and even less probable was the likelihood that I would become a настоящий герой Советского Союза. Well, not exactly a typical hero of the Soviet Union, but this was a very strange journey, and it started. Next slide, please. This is my crewmates. This is my space station crewmates. There's me on the left, and in the center, Sergei Volkov was our commander, and Oleg Kononenko was our board engineer. Next slide, please. This is Sergei, and that's Sergei's father. Sergei was the first second-generation space traveler. His father was also a cosmonaut. And next slide, please. You see his father was a настоящий герой Советского Союза. And so if you, next slide, please. And there's Sergei. If you look very carefully, Sergei in the Soviet, the pioneers, and that's him holding the Soviet flag right next to the column. That's little Sergei. So Sergei grew up as a very typical Soviet boy in Russia. And what I have to tell you is that the transformation, me going to be a cosmonaut, was not just one way. Sergei and Oleg also underwent a transformation. If we show the next slide, they became New York Yankees fans. So there was definitely a cultural exchange. Next slide. Oh, sorry, one previous, thank you. So the first thing I had to do to be able to train in Russia was to learn how to speak Russian. So I spent 6 weeks living in Lefortovo, in this apartment building here, with this Russian family. Typiczная бабушка, да? So that was my family. I lived there for 6 weeks and studied. It was the most mentally draining experience of my life. Самый сложный шаг в космос. Русский язык. Next slide. This is interesting. So this might look a little strange, but this is actually the locker room in the cosmonaut gym in Star City. So in the locker room, they have a sort of a private and very special, very revered museum. And if you look at that locker on the far right, the door is removed and it's covered in glass. And inside there is the contents of the locker as Yuri Gagarin left them after he went off for his unfortunate and fatal flight. So inside there, you can see his clothing, his workout gear. He has his shoes and his badminton racket are sitting right there behind the glass. And if you look at the white locker to the left with the bathing suit on the door handle, that's my bathing suit. So that's my locker. So this was really, really strange for a Jewish kid growing up in New Jersey to end up with a locker one down from Yuri Gagarin. If we go to the next slide, you can see written above the lockers there, on the left is Garrett Reisman, and on the right it's Yuri Gagarin. Next slide. We did a lot of training events in Star City. One thing we had to do that was very arduous was winter survival training. We had to spend 3 days just making use of only the equipment we had inside the Soyuz capsule. And I did this with my 2 Russian crewmates. The fellow in the middle, Misha, would actually later, you'll see him later in my video, we flew together on the space station for a short period of time in my last mission. And then what I'll show you quickly, this next slide, is
В Крыму начинаются специальные тренировки космонавтов. Будущих покорителей космоса учат плавать. Эти навыки могут не пригодиться на орбите, но могут спасти жизнь при возвращении на Землю. За работой интернациональных экипажей наблюдала Алена Иваниченко.
Буксир Черноморского флота «Шахтер» на время стал центром космической подготовки. В акватории Севастополя идут тренировки интернациональных экипажей по выживанию космонавтов в случае экстренной посадки на воду. Спускаемый аппарат «Союза-2» пока на палубе. Астронавт НАСА Гаррет Рейсман знакомится с российской космической техникой.
Люк – это наверх. Мы 3 человека внутри, и мало места, честно говоря. Это значит, мы должны быть очень хорошие друзьями, да?
5 экипажей друг за другом проходят весь тренировочный цикл. Спускаемый аппарат вместе с космонавтами сбрасывают в воду. Дрейфовать на волнах он может сколько угодно, но людям внутри этой тесной капсулы долго не продержаться. К тому же космические скафандры не приспособлены к долгому пребыванию в воде. Внутри спускаемого аппарата 3 космонавтов должны одновременно переодеться из скафандра в гидрокомбинезоны «Форель». После этого они связываются со станцией и, сообщив свои координаты, выходят наружу. Этого момента ждет целая группа сопровождения. Десятки специалистов, готовые прийти на помощь, если что-то пойдет не так. В первую очередь это медики.
Выйдя из, можно сказать, сауны и прыгая в холодную воду, они практически себя там очень плохо чувствуют. На самом деле условия нечеловеческие.
Сложные упражнения первыми прошли будущие малайские пионеры космоса. За них переживали особенно. Подготовка у туристов из некосмических держав слабее, чем у профессиональных астронавтов.
Естественно, какой-то минимум там в случае аварийной ситуации, вот почему и проходят люди вот эти вот тренировки, он должен знать, по крайней мере, не мешать командиру экипажа, а где-то и помогать.
Кандидат в первые космонавты Малайзии не скрывает своей радости. Испытание прошел, мечта стала на шаг ближе.
Хочу чувствовать, как Гагарин чувствует, когда он летал в космос. Конечно, он мой герой, Юрий Гагарин.
У американского экипажа задача сложнее. Двойная нештатная ситуация. Во время аварийной посадки на воду начинается пожар внутри спускаемого аппарата. На интернациональных тренировках язык общения интернациональный – русский.
Да, мы получились, это наша последняя тренировка. И было... Крайне. Крайне, да. Извините, крайне. Но все было нормально.
Алена Иваниченко, Денис Погорелый, Виктор Казак, Первый канал, Севастополь.
Thank you. So after all that training, I went up to the space station with the help of the shuttle Endeavour on my first flight, and that's our launch. This was in 2008. And Sergei and Oleg came up via the help of their rocket, the Soyuz, and the 3 of us met on board the station. And there we are as a crew of the MKS. Next slide. There was our ship. That's how the space station looked at the time. She's grown since then, as you'll see in the video. But it made a nice home for us. And I was up there for 3 months with Sergei and Oleg. Next slide. Yeah, this is a photo I took that, yeah, very good. Usually I have to ask people where this is, and it usually takes a long time for them to guess, but you guys got it right away. You can see where we are. Can somebody point to the shul right there? Yeah? Okay. So the interesting thing about this photo, you might have seen photos from space taken with where you can see the pyramids or other buildings, and those were taken with very large lenses, 800 millimeter lenses. This one was taken with a 55 millimeter lens, and what that means is it's a 1-to-1 magnification. In other words, this is what it really looks like when you look out the window. So you can see if you're trying to find New York City, it's actually not that easy. You have to get used to a whole different length scale. It's very easy to find Long Island. It sticks out into the water. And then you got to trace it all the way down to the west, and there's Brooklyn. And if you look up a little bit, you can see with the naked eye the rectangle that is Central Park. Next slide. So that was my first mission. That was to the space station for 3 months. The mission I just completed was my second mission, and it lasted for only 2 weeks. And this is our mission patch, and we launched in May of this year, just a few months ago. Next slide. Here's my crew. This is the crew of the ship Atlantis. And on the next slide, you see our launch. Now, people ask all the time, they ask me, what is it like when the shuttle blasts off? How does it feel inside? And it's a very difficult thing to describe because there's a lot of power, a lot of thrust. It's kind of, the best thing I think we could come up with is it's kind of like you're sitting on top of a rocket. But it's really an amazing experience. This time, different than my first launch on the shuttle. On Atlantis, I had a window view. I was the flight engineer for launch, so I had a job to do, but since the ship performed flawlessly, I got to look out the window and see the sky go from blue to dark blue to black over the course of just a few minutes, and it was really spectacular. Next slide. That is what the space station looks like now, a lot bigger than when I was last there, and we added to it, a antenna. I think the next slide shows the antenna. Oh no, that's a shot of me on one of my spacewalks. I did 2 spacewalks on this one. Next slide, and one more. There's the antenna. So our job was to put a new antenna on top of the space station. That's me holding on to the antenna, and I'm riding on the tip of the space station's robot arm. The robot arm is 60 feet long, and at one point, you'll see in the movie, it held me straight above the station. I was 6 stories up looking down, and it was quite a sight. I'm really glad we did this because, as you know, there's a bit of uncertainty about the future of our space program at NASA. The shuttle is only going to fly 2, maybe 3 more times, and then we're really not sure what happens next. So the good news is that I can always get a job with DirecTV installing satellite dishes. Very happy about that. Next slide. So this is our primary payload. So I mentioned the antenna, but really the primary job of our mission that we just completed was to deliver a Russian-built module. So this is us in Moscow looking at it in Energia at the plant there, and it's called the what's it called? The mini research module in English, or Mali Isledovatelski module. And this was a very good thing for me because it gave me job security. I figured, well, to install the mini research module, they're going to need a mini astronaut. And so I got the job, and I actually got to operate the robot arm and install this on the space station. You'll see that in the movie, too. If we go to the next slide. That's, there she is. That's in the Russian name, the technical name I gave you, but the non-technical name is Rassvet, or dawn, or sunrise, dawn. So that's dawn, Rassvet getting installed. Next slide. And there's, you can see Rassvet written down there, as we depart after we have undocked and we're headed home. Next slide. There's our landing in Florida at the end of just over 11 days. And so that occurred at the end of May. And next slide. Okay. With that, what I'd like to do, since we're running a little short on time, what I'd like to do is show you a movie, if you'd like to see it. That's kind of the video highlights of that mission that we just completed. So they're working on bringing that up. This movie is again, it's a very quick video highlight, and it's meant to rock out. So we'll try to crank up the volume. I hope you like the music, and then hopefully at the end of the movie, we'll have a little bit of time for questions and answers. There we go. Great, thank you.
hopes and expectations, black holes and revelations, and our hopes and expectations, black holes and revelations.
Good job, buddy. This one. Well done, man. Good job. That was fun.
Almost all of us on board Atlantis, we've been here before, but it's bigger than we remember, and speaking for myself, better than I remember. I love this place.
Whoa, that's cool.
Atlanta Chief in love with you. Thanks, Bill.
Unbelievable. Yeah. There it is. Yep, I felt it. Hey, ta-da! I might only be about 5 foot 4. Right now, I think I'm the highest person around. Woo! The trail looks pretty far away.
We won't leave you. Well, I mean, unless we have to.
And it's coming down. Okay, I've got it. Do we have the battery? Running go.
Synchronized swimming by their fishbowl.
Oh no! Oh no! Hold on, I might be able to save this.
Oh, or maybe not. Take 4.
This is called the over and back.
Oh, yeah, baby. Do the scissors.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think this mount is coming. Oh, he's wrapped up in the wires.
Big G is being propelled by ELT Antonelli.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really glad you liked it. We had a lot of fun putting that together, as you could tell. And what I'd like to do, unfortunately, we're running really late, so I have time only for 2 questions. So there's a lot of pressure to ask one of the 2 questions. You're confident, huh? Okay, okay. Wow. Am I the first Russian-speaking Jew in space? You know, I could add that to my list. I might have another one. I thought I only had one. I don't know. Yes, I did hear this rumor that there might have been one of the cosmonauts might have been Jewish, but he wasn't talking much about it at the time. So I might be number two. I wasn't even number two for very long because the fellow that replaced me on the space. Okay, thank you. The person that replaced me on the space station, Greg Shamatov, also is an American Jew, also Russian-speaking. So my distinction didn't last very long. Okay, last question. I'll answer that real quickly. Unfortunately, we can't give it out. The thing is, we have a legal problem that the music is copyrighted. So we're not allowed to distribute it or copy it, but we're working on getting a permission to do that. What's that? The photos, most of the photos and the source materials on www.nasa.gov. If you search for STS-132, was our mission. Last question. Yeah, boy. I'll try to answer that question briefly because I could spend a whole another 3 hours talking about that. In fact, I have a whole presentation I have on the Columbia tragedy from a kind of technical management perspective and how it might have been averted if things were handled differently. We had a cultural problem at NASA that existed at the time, something that the investigators called the normalization of deviance, and that meant that people got accustomed to the foam coming off the tank, even though they knew that that was not supposed to happen. And because they got away with it for so long, they eventually just stopped caring about it. And this was a huge mistake. And even after it occurred, there was this mentality that it couldn't possibly do any damage, and thus all the people who spoke up to try to get them to take some serious action were ignored. Unfortunately, that was a big problem at NASA. It's a very, very difficult thing to correct. I think the leadership at NASA tried very hard to change the culture. We did do some organizational changes by making a independent safety office, but I feel that we could have probably done more organizationally. What we rely on, frankly, is that people learn their lesson, and so it was presented in such a stark fashion that people who spoke up on issues of safety were treated differently. The question is, will that last? And that's a challenge that NASA has to continue to fight. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Before you go, as the MC, I have one question. What did you miss the most on Earth? And was it anything you really missed?
Yes, what I missed the most on Earth, I can tell you that the thing I missed second most was pizza. And I came back to Brooklyn soon after landing, and I got myself a nice slice of pizza. I'll let you guess what I missed the most.
Please thank Dr. Garrett Reisman. Thank you very much for a wonderful, wonderful presentation.